It's time, so stay a while, stay a while. All we got is time, so stay a while, stay a while.
Hello and welcome back. You're listening to a brand new episode of Crystal Ball Clarity of It All. As always, I'm your host, Crystal Fox. This week's guest, I sat down with Caroline Nadine Helsing. She is the author of the book, Unapologetic: Tales of the Original Party Crasher. This heartfelt story of a daughter processing the loss of her mother while she examines and celebrates her mother's story through clues and memories left behind. This week, she teaches us just how she sought clarity through writing her mother's memoir. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome back, everyone. This week's guest, I have Caroline Helsing, and she is the author of the book, Unapologetic: Tales of the Original Party Crasher. So I just want to say thank you so much, Caroline, for coming on. And please tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. It's a pleasure, and I'm excited to talk with you. So yeah, my name is Caroline Nadine Helsing, and I'm the author of Unapologetic: Tales of the Original Party Crasher. It's a memoir biography, if you will, about my mother's life. Get into that later, but she was a very unique character. I always felt like I wanted to tell her stories. And there was a moment in my life where there was no denying that I had to do that. But yeah, I'm just a girl from Hawaii. I was born and raised there. Moved to California 2 days before my 23rd birthday. So I really wanted to get off the rock and explore life and opportunities on the mainland. And I lived in LA for quite some time. I was in the entertainment business there. I was acting, and I left LA and moved down to Orange County after I started a pet products manufacturing company.
Okay.
So we made what we fondly called doggy wife beaters.
Really?
Tank tops and t-shirts with slogans on it. And our first slogan was "Bitches Love Me," which is kind of, a tongue in cheek. And we wound up having about 250 different sayings and, matching people, tank tops and all kind of collars, beds, steps. So yeah. So I had that for about 10 and a half years. And then I sold it. And then I wound up going back to my first love, which was photography, and volunteering a little bit, traveling around. I was involved with the Rotary clubs, and I would travel with these mobile medical clinics. And we went into the Amazon rainforest and treated people.
What? When was this?
This was just a few years ago. Yeah, I did it over a course of quite a few years. We were actually the last crew to go into India to administer polio vaccinations via the droplets. And so, Mexico and, lots of clinics and stuff, obviously in the States as well. But through my photography, I would document these clinics and everything that was happening. And then, I would also write. And I would submit my stories to the local papers and so forth. And I kind of reignited my love of writing. And so this is a long answer to your question, but that's a little bit about myself. So that's kind of what brought me into I actually really love writing. And then, on the back of my mind, I'd always, like I said, wanted to share the stories about my mother's life. And so one of these moments of clarity for me was, if I can back up a little bit, I actually have a little bit of a neck injury. And so every time I would do edits on photography projects, I'd basically kill myself. Like, it was just, I'd be in so much pain that I would, if there was anything to be made in photography for myself, I would spend it all just on therapy, on chiropractic and acupuncture and massage, because I was always in pain after edits, just the repetitive movement for me. So there was that moment for me that I was thinking, I need to find something else because this isn't working. So I had this idea of this, story about my mother. And then when COVID hit, I mean, it was sort of a little bit of a blessing in disguise with the, being, in lockdown. I'm like, what the heck else am I going to do? I mean, I literally treated this like a full-time job, and just literally I just put pen to paper and, buckled down and got it done.
Isn't it completely amazing that in the midst of a pandemic,
Yeah.
we sat there, and even though we had that time, I feel like our creative side really came out. Like we found different ways to navigate that, different
I agree
time.
with you, because I think a lot of us like kind of went within, and you either go one way or another. I mean, it wasn't easy, but for me, it was just on the heels of my mother passing. And so, I mean, it was a wonderful way for me to be able to just kind of make sense of what happened. It was like a therapeutic process for me to just make sense and to understand what happened, and also to like kind of revisit her in my mind, if that even makes sense. It was almost like she was
Completely.
always with me. Yeah, she was always with me, like every day. So one of the things for me that was really difficult was that idea of actually being done with the book, actually not having anything else to write. Something I expressed to my dad. I was like, what's going to happen when I'm done? It's like I'm going to lose her all over again, because, she's something that was the first thing I thought of when I woke up. And I thought about it all the time because I was writing all these stories about her. And then she must have a hand in this, because I feel like I'm thinking about her more now. I'm more busy now with the promotion of this. It's crazy.
And on top of that, having her there with you, you can see that you're still kind of guessing, but it's almost like she's there still reminding you like, hey, the story's not over yet. My story's not over yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And you never know. Book number 2, right? So let's focus on this one before I talk you into something else. Please tell us, you said it was, this whole pandemic was on the heel of losing your mother. Can you take us back there?
Yeah. So she actually passed on New Year's Day in 2019. And again, just knowing anything about her, I mean, it completely makes sense, because she always loved a good party. So I say, of course, she would wait until New Year's and go out with a big bang. But it was very difficult for me. We were very close. It was sudden and yet not sudden, if that even makes sense. I mean, she fell. So it wasn't like she was, sick leading up to it, but she fell, and then her body just couldn't heal itself. She wasn't really coming from a strong foundation. I called her the bionic woman, because she was always like surviving through these crazy things. I mean, she had a liver transplant. She's had bouts of cancer. She's had like near misses on 9/11, like just all these things. She's literally had like 12 lives. And so who would have thought like a simple thing like a fall, right? Yeah. So, but unfortunately her body just wasn't strong enough. And I mean, without going into detail, I mean, it was kind of eating away at itself. So it's still hard for me to talk about, but
no, that's completely okay. And I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But again, one of the things I had prior to my writing this, we had all talked about, wait, we don't really know what her after death plan was. She never really talked about what she wanted to do. It's not like she said, okay, I want to be buried here, or I want, to be cremated or whatever that. So I had to go by something she had said in passing. She had said, Caroline, when I die, I want my ashes spread across Bergdorf Goodman, which is, if you know what that's a high-end department store in Manhattan. So that kind of tells a little bit about our character. And
very Hollywood. I like it.
She was very Hollywood, very, she was like a cross between Holly Golightly from Breakfast at Tiffany's and like Auntie Mame. she had this fabulous flair for dressing. She's kind of like a Moira from Schitt's Creek, like very over the top.
That's my favorite.
Living on an island, living in Hawaii for 36 years. So she definitely like stood out like a sore thumb. But I mean, she was amazing. She was fabulous. She was just unapologetically herself, very authentically herself. And so when it came time for us to figure out what we were going to do, I said, well, she did say this is what she wanted. So anyway, it's what inspired me. We did do that. And it's what inspired me to, and I also had told her that I would take her back to all of her favorite places in New York City after she had passed. She was very much a New Yorker. It was very much like her first love, that city. She had a love affair with that city. And so that was sort of like what inspired me to take her back, just that comment. And so it was like this really cool journey that I had, and taking her back to all the places that she had told me about while I was growing up. And it was
what are some others?
Well, I mean, she's on Fifth Avenue. She's in Central Park. She's the Plaza. So I write about it. And, I always feel like it's important to put humor into very difficult situations, sort of what has got me through tough times. And it's certainly what has gotten through, my mother used to get through tough times, and she's had plenty. People have said, yep, when I've read it, I laughed and I cried on the same page. And that's kind of like, sometimes I laugh through my tears. So I don't know.
I am the same way. And I tell people, sometimes I'm not laughing. It's just like an instant reaction to it, so, like sometimes being caught off guard, or just being like, well, I'm not exactly in it. I'm standing back and I'm looking at all of these things, especially memories when it comes to your mom, or, you go through so many different experiences, especially seeing her grow up too. Right. Yeah. And Miss Hollywood herself. So I do not blame you there. And I was looking at your Facebook, and you had put it into really good terms that, once you're planning, right? You were planning, you were taking her around, you're doing all the things, but then once everything kind of gets silent, no one tells you about that part, right? Like the days after, when your mind's not busy, there's no more planning, there's no more anything to do. You're just like,
distractions.
Yeah. Right. No distractions.
Or like giving you a hug or sending you flowers. Yeah. You're just alone with your thoughts. That's when I had my first big, ugly cry. And I dropped to the floor and just let it out. I didn't care if my neighbors heard me. But that's also, coincidentally, that was also one of the first few times where I felt like I got a sign from my mother that she was still here. So I had the flickering lights, and that particular evening when I just lost it. My husband had just left for a work trip on the East Coast, and I was actually scheduled to fly out the next day to take her back to New York. But I just, I walked into my kitchen, and I looked around, me, and there were flowers still everywhere, and the memory book where everybody had written, about her was on the table. Anyway, I kind of went through it, and just memories came, and, I started feeling sorry for herself. I let out my big cry, and all of a sudden I hear this buzzing coming from upstairs. And, I laugh now because it's like, those horror films where you see the character going inside the house and upstairs.
And you're like, no, don't do it. Don't do it.
That was me. I went upstairs. I didn't leave the house. I'm like, what is that noise? So I'm going upstairs trying to figure out where this noise is coming from. And it was my electric toothbrush just happened to turn itself on, buzzing along on the countertop, just dancing along on that countertop. And I kind of had to laugh because I thought maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was my mother saying, hey, stop crying, but it happened a lot. It wasn't just that one time. It happened like often throughout the next few weeks. So much so that I had to get like a new, battery or something. I would come home and I just find it keeled over on the floor, So those kinds of, she came to visit me, I feel like, in so many ways. Music would come on. I remember one time I was sitting in my room and just thinking about her, just kind of, saying, I just tell me you're okay, not really thinking anything is happening, but you're, in my head, like, just, are you okay? And my iTunes came on. I don't listen to music through iTunes. Like well, I have Sonos or old school other ways, but I never listened to it through my computer. And that song, Cheek to Cheek, the one where Fred Astaire is dancing with Ginger Rogers, and the one's like, heaven, I'm in heaven, that song. And so that's what came on, because I'm like, Mom, are you okay? How are you? And so it was the heaven, I'm in heaven, I'm, dancing, whatever. I'm, basically it was just enough for me to tell, for me to get the message that she was okay. I mean, I have so many, just.
Yeah, but those are honestly amazing. I know just like shortly after losing my mom, and I was only 13, I had asked that same question, to be honest. I was like, if you can hear me, like anything. And I remember going to sleep that night, and I always say I could envision her talking to me, and she told me, like, I'm going to be okay. I have to go, but like, you're going to be okay. And I love you. And I was like, in the dream, like, no, I'm going to find you. And then that was like the last like dream that I have had of her. So I truly believe that they come back and they're like, hey, I'm here. Obviously, we're still living in the human experience, and there's so many emotions when it comes to it. And I think remembering those good memories are so crucial. And I saw the picture of her smiling in your wedding photo with your husband.
Oh.
And she just was, you could tell. And when you talk about how she usually like pursed out her lips to have a
rare photo of her smiling, showing her teeth. She was all about, okay, no, I'm going to be, I have this idea of glamour, and I'm looking at it right now.
It was a beautiful photo, which is worth 1,000 words, but your story means more than that. So I really enjoyed even just seeing that. And then you have videos of her, like just everything that you're showing, and you and her dancing. I loved that.
I was happy to come across that. It's weird when you like just start packing up things and you come across, that's the only video that I have of her. And it was right after she had gotten her liver transplant, one of the many lives that she's
so many
survived. Yeah. And she was just dancing around the living. It was during the holidays, and, we had the music playing, and we just started dancing together. My boyfriend at the time just happened to get us on camera, and I know I'm grateful to have it. But
beautiful.
But I'm glad you liked it. It's funny because I actually didn't put any pictures in the book at all. I thought it was a choice that I made because I thought your imagination was that much more powerful, and it doesn't really matter what someone looks like, right? So I didn't have any photos in the book, but I do have a lot of photos and video and stories and whatnot on my socials. So people have said it's been kind of fun, like, referring to that as they read the book. So, I guess if someone who also wants the visual, it's a great place to go, because there's some fun things that I'm still kind of discovering and putting up there.
And you're also expressing in real time, like reflecting back to these memories. So it's kind of both ends of it. So along in the book, what makes your mom the original party crasher?
Wow. So she grew up in New York City, born and raised there. And as a young girl, she was very good friends with Ron Galella, who is known as like the original paparazzi. So he shot everyone. And so when he was just starting out, these two young kids, right, he would get these invitations or know about these parties, these movie premieres in New York City. I mean, and it was like everything from like the April and Paris ball, or the whatever, like it just Ava Gardner, Sinatra, like everybody who was, and everyone was
wow
throughout these things. And so she and they would both go as a team. I call them like the Bonnie and Clyde team of party crashing, and the only shooting done was by his camera. But she would like hide his camera under the table and then like go off to look for who knows, she had an obnoxious amount of confidence, like obnoxious. I mean, she would just sit next, didn't matter if she would sit next to so-and-so, wait for Sonata or whatever, And then when she started dating my father, he'd come and pick her up at these events. And then she'd like pull him in and introduce him to, I remember one of them was Ava Gardner. One of them was, I think, like relative for Charlie Chaplin. I don't know, whatever. So the original title for the book was going to be called Harlow, which was the nickname that the New York Post gave her. They did a write-up on her. So when she was, in the midst of her party crashing days, there was a write-up that it went something like this. We have a new party crasher on the scene. They call her Harlow. She gets in merely by outdressing the other guests or something like that, whatever, but they call her Harlow. So that was in my mind the whole time. So when I was writing the book, that's what it was called. That was like my working title. And, I happened to be talking to an old roommate of mine. She's actually in the book because I talk about the different portions of our life together. And so when I used to live in Los Angeles, she would come and visit me and she met all my roommates. And that was, I had some funny stories there. But so one of my roommates, my mother and her used to have it called it temperature wars. My mother was perpetually cold. She was always cold and wanted to turn the heat up. Any person in their right mind would be sweating profusely normally because my mother would like it at like a toasty 86 degrees or whatever.
Ooh, I think I'm sweating.
Seriously. So they would have these like little temperature. So like, she'd turn it up and then like, I'd hear her door open and her walk down the hall and then like turn it down and whatever. So this would go on and on, But anyway, so I have this little funny scene that I had written and I told her, it was in the book and everything. And so we had a laugh together and reminisce a little bit about my mother. And I said, yeah, she was just unapologetically herself or whatever. And we talked and she stopped me. She said, oh, that's what you need to name the book. You need to name it Unapologetic. So I credit my roommate for suggesting that title. Cause at first I said, no. It's going to be called Harlow. But the more I sat with it, it's so her. I mean, she was just authentic and she was herself. She was, yeah.
The Unapologetic draws me in. And then the fact of the original Party Crasher, and then I love the photo on the front. I just see it. Like, I don't even know her, but through your words and what you've posted, I can see it like very Hollywood. Oh, yes. It's so good. So in the midst of this, like, what was your process and you're digging through memories, right? So many different memories, good, bad, happy, sad, all of those. But what was your initial process?
So initially I began this in November, December of 2019. I thought, let me just jot some stories. And I took a memoir class just to kind of get my feet wet, just to kind of see if this could be a thing. And then through that class, I actually, I was like, yeah, this can be a thing. I kind of like this. This could be going somewhere. And a few of the students and myself, we started a writing group. And so we decided to meet. I think it was like, I don't know, at the time, it was either once a month or every other week or something. And I was the only one that, didn't live in Los Angeles. So I drove up there, but I was happy to do it because, just being able to bounce ideas off of other writers whom I respected was invaluable for me, especially as a new writer. Well, I mean, in this genre, I'd written before, but not like this. So it was very helpful for me. And then, as everybody knows, March 15th, COVID, right? So we all were like, well, should we continue this or what? Nobody knew it was going to last that long, but we thought, yeah, let's do this until we, meet up again, right? We'll do it via Zoom. And I loved it because, I didn't have to drive up there, but it was one of the best things that for me made me accountable to continue to keep writing, knowing that, because this wound up being like a weekly check-in, we would meet every Saturday, knowing that I had a group of people waiting for like something that I had written to be able to give me feedback, just made me, right? Just made me like, oh, well, I got to write something. That's all I did. I mean, I didn't, I just, I lived and breathed it. So I credit that process. And, I talked to relatives. I reconnected with I reconnected with family members. I reconnected with her best friend, Marilyn, who, told me so many stories of her youth, in particular in the Catskill days, which was one of my favorite chapters to write. I mean, have you ever seen Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
I've just seen a commercial.
Okay, love that show. So you got to see that show.
I'm going to go watch it after this now.
Okay, so when you see it, just kind of then have that like sort of era of what, there's a lot of Catskill moments in that show. And so that was the time that my mother was living in, when she would go up with her best friend Marilyn, she was a singer, and she would open up for all the acts there. And and they would hang out with like Buddy Hackett, or I don't know, whatever, like Sammy Davis Jr., like, and then,
What?
and like they're okay. But the funny thing is, which totally, again, gives you an insight into her character, they were like 15, 16 when they met. I think she was maybe 16, 17 when she started going up there. Definitely 16. Anyway, she was underage, right? But they would say that they were 18. Marilyn would say she was 18 in order to be able to perform there. And, between their obnoxious amount of confidence and like, the way they like carried themselves, they'd be hanging out with these like crazy characters. And I think I want to say, deep down, they probably knew, or, maybe people had an eye out for them to like protect them. But yeah, there were some pretty funny moments as well that I write about. So reconnecting with, her best friend, and, and also actually kind of reconnecting with my father in a way. I got to know the man behind my father, because my dad was always very private. My parents are complete opposites, as I talk about in the book, but mother was very demonstrative, especially with her love, and like, you never question what she was thinking. And my dad was more reserved. And so, there were moments when I would call him on Mother's Day because there was no one else to call, and and then when he knew that I was starting to write this book, I started asking him questions, and I was so impressed that he remembered these incredible details. Like, he remembered the color of her dress the day that they first met. And like,
what a good man.
Right? Yeah. They don't make them like that anymore. Yeah. She got a good one. But yeah, he remembered the song, that was playing when he realized he was in love with her, and just like things like that. Like, when do you have an opportunity to like find this out? So, this is what I learned. Anyone who is still blessed to have, their parents in their life, or family members, or whatever it is, friends, ask them questions. Like, ask questions, because you'll wish you had if and when, they are no longer here. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to like find out these things. I mean, I remember when I was packing up her things in her room, after she had passed, and like coming across all of these things that I had found, like the programs, for example, of those movie premieres, and it's like when you originally like hear these stories are just that. Stories are wispy. So there's a part of you that's like, well, did this really happen? I don't know. Maybe it's just a story. But then when you come across tangible things, it makes it all the more real. So
like sets the scene.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, yeah, this actually did happen. Or you come across pictures or whatever it is. But it was all part of my process. So my long answers to your question, it was all part of the process. I mean, I didn't write in a linear way. I didn't write, the first chapter first, and then the second chapter second. I wrote what I was inspired to write. So actually the very first chapter I wrote about was one of the last few in the book. which was the journey that I took with her when I went back to New York with her. But yeah, I mean, I would just, it could have been from a conversation that I had with someone, and I just decided to write about that. But I will say that one of the harder parts for me to write was actually just the simpler parts, the laying the foundation, the like, okay, she was born here, her parents were this da, 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 da. I loved writing the scenes with the dialogue, and because it did make me feel like she was right there with me. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like I could kind of bring her back to life again, it's words.
That's beautiful. I love that you say that because I can see it on your face too. Like it's still taking you on a journey. It truly
Yeah.
is. And getting clarity through going through something so hard because my mom I lost in 2002. So it's been quite some time, but I tell people you move forward, but it
Mhm.
still feels like yesterday. A lot of times it feels like yesterday, especially some days come up
Yeah.
and you're experiencing something, you're like, oh, they would have said this. Or if
Right.
they were here, we do like the what ifs sort of
Yeah.
situation. So I
Yeah.
actually love that you wrote this memoir because I just from my own personal experience, wish I would have had that. And I encourage so many others. There's different ways, just write, just ask questions, just like what you're saying. Ask
Right.
questions, write stuff down. There's so many easy ways to create, sending it
Mhm.
in, have someone create a book for you to hand down, and any of those, because like you said, those tangible things really set the scene to those stories. So I think
Right.
that's a really good message also to tell others just to keep them alive and with us through,
Yeah.
our journey.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Actually, a girlfriend of mine did something similar, and hers was more like a very thin little pamphlet kind of thing, but she had written it for her family. And she, in essence, did the same thing. After I'd started, she just was like, I'm gonna, talk to my grandparents, and I'm gonna, the get, da, 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 and it was a story about her grandfather, and yeah. So who is still alive, So it was a tribute to him while he was still here.
Oh, okay.
Which
See, I like
is
that approach too. Because then they
Yeah.
get to see it and they, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Everyone gets to read it and be involved as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, if you were to give me 3 words to describe your mother's life, what would they be?
Authentic, glamorous, at least in her early days. No, she, you know what? She lived in this fantasy world. Okay. All right. Fantasy world. That's 2 words. Yeah. I mean, authentic. Yeah. Glamorous.
Unapologetic,
Unapologetic.
glamorous.
I can't just do 3 words.
Hey,
Yeah.
that is completely okay. So, within your process, do you feel like there was a lot of healing?
Yeah. I do.
And what about your family too? Did your dad read it as well?
He did. And it's funny you brought that up, because if I didn't feel like I got the permission in a way from my father, I probably wouldn't have released the book. Because, like I said, he's very private. And I wasn't just writing about my mother, in order to fully tell her story, I had to write a little bit about him. I had to write a little bit about my brother, and when it was finished, I thought, well, maybe this was just for me. And if it was, that's okay. But I remember, and actually I put it in the introduction of the book because it was such a powerful moment for me, and like a release, and for me to be able to actually do this officially. I spoke with my father. I said, okay, I finished this book, and I'm kind of scared. And he's like, what are you scared of? Anyway, so, and I was honest with him. I said, what you're going to think, and he said, what do you mean of what I will think? And I said, yeah, like this is not just about her. It's about you too. And he just said, honey, these are your memories of your mother, and you've worked really hard on this book. And well, yes, I'm private, but I'm just going to have to take that into consideration. Like
Mm.
it's okay. Yeah, whatever it was he said, just like gave me the freedom and the okay to write it. And then after he did, it's still okay. Okay, thanks, Dad. But oh my God, is he going to like it? When he read it and he called me, I remember I was out to lunch with a couple people, and he called me and I just started crying, and he's like, it was just perfect. And he's a man of very few words, and the way that he was happy about how I portrayed my brother as well, and just getting his approval and confirmation meant a lot to me. So yeah.
Yeah, because he's known her for so long. I mean, and how supportive. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, your dad sounds so amazing. Seriously. And just even being involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a nice thing for us to go through together as well. I mean, I'm sure it was probably helpful for him as well to relive these memories. I mean, I literally I would call and I'd be like, okay, so how did you first meet again? Or, like, tell me, what do you remember about, so it was kind of cool. I could assume for him to even go through the memory banks. Yeah, they were together for a long time. My mother went into hospice on their 50th wedding anniversary.
No.
It was heartbreaking. Because I remember my father in the back of the car, when we were, anyway, I've never seen him cry ever. And that was the moment that I first seen him cry. And it was just, I heard him softly say, this is our 50th anniversary. Yeah. So there's just so many heartbreaking moments, but that's life. And if you can go through them with loved ones, if you can relive the happy moments, that's all you can do.
Yeah,
So
and even you just sharing, I feel like I know your mom like this much just
yeah.
from talking to you, and I haven't even fully read the book, you know what I mean? So I am so like intrigued to sit down and read it. And I love that you're keeping her alive through the stories. That's how we've kept so many memories throughout time, was through our storytelling. So I'm glad that you've shared them and took advantage of even rough couple of years. It has not been easy for you. And 50 years is amazing for your parents to have been together. That is something we typically don't see, and that just shows strength.
Yeah.
So you
Thank
have
you.
definitely been through it. And I mean, your mom, the legacy, like just Miss Hollywood out here. And then I remember reading the Myra and just honestly, like just envisioning watching Schitt's Creek. And it was just like setting the scene. Like, you're an amazing writer with setting that scene. So,
Yeah.
so I have to ask, what is next for you?
Well, in terms of the book, I'm embarking on the journey to put it in an Audible format. So that's exciting. I hope to start that soon. And, there's been some discussion, some desire to possibly turn it into a movie, which I'm like putting it out there. So talking with some people, but yeah, I mean that's some possibilities for the book. I do love writing, so I do foresee, writing something again in the future. But we'll see. For now, I'm just enjoying this, enjoying still her being in my orbit at the moment. And yeah, whatever it turns into, I'm going to have fun with, and I'm going to do in her honor with love. It's my desire.
That's amazing. Especially we are manifesting. It's going to happen. I was thinking this would be a perfect movie, to be honest. I have to ask, who would you want to play your mom?
Oh my gosh. Well, the first thing that comes to mind, for whatever reason, at least in the like her older years, with like, I can't believe I said that, but like Kathleen O'Hara, literally like from Schitt's Creek.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I see a little bit of her. I don't know.
I mean, you're an actress. You could play her younger.
I could play myself.
I think it would be absolutely amazing. And I mean, look at what you're doing already. I see so much of what you're putting out there, and it's amazing. So where can we follow you at, though?
Well, I have a website. It's my full name, CarolineNadineHelsing.com. And that links all my socials. But if you were just to go to the socials, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and it's all the Caroline Nadine Helsing author. So I kind of make it simple. Yeah.
And I'm also trying to convince her to come on to Clubhouse
Yeah.
So you
Well,
can see her over there.
I guess I'm theoretically on there. I just need to get my butt on there. So yeah, maybe you'll see me in a room. Is that how it works? It's a room.
It's a room. It's a room. See, you already got the lingo.
Oh
You're
my
doing
God,
great.
halfway there.
Yes. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast and connecting. Like we met through Megan, which was through Clubhouse, ironically. See, boom. And just so much, similarities and like the loss of a parent and just that connection. It's not easy. And I feel like only someone who has gone through it understands whatsoever. So I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing, completely sharing. And I see how just inspirational you are about getting her story out. So I'm so glad you got to share it here. And I want to tell everyone, please go like, subscribe, push the buttons, do the things, go follow Caroline's journey through all of this and go pick up her book, Unapologetic Tales of the Original Party Crasher, because I will be picking up one. And I will see you next week for a brand new episode with a brand new guest. Goodbye.